Sophie, hello, a very good evening. Welcome to Look North, where Supply Teacher Week continues. Here comes our top story tonight. Should private parking firms be better regulated? The motorists threatened with court because of issues with a ticket machine.
I am confident that I entered my full registration plate. Sadly, I have no way of proving to the parking company that that is what I've done.
We're speaking to a consumer expert about the matter. Also tonight, the retreat for minors and their families facing an uncertain future. Mum sets the benchmark. 64-year-old Jackie takes a silver medal after being trained by her son. And we sit down with EastEnders and Doctor Who star Tracy Ann Oberman as she appears in The Merchant of Venice at the Leeds Playhouse.
Well, there was a bit of brightness at first, but skies have been generally cloudy like here in Staithes, but a big change on its way. By this time tomorrow, it's going to be exceptionally mild. Join me for the very latest.
Hello there. Now, should more be done to regulate private car parking companies? 2 days ago, we featured XL Parking Services, based in Sheffield, which had been fining people for not paying within a few minutes of arriving at a car park. Well, we've now heard from other drivers facing court action and fines from the same company because of issues with a ticket machine. In a moment, we will speak to a consumer journalist who is calling for better regulation. But first, Beth Parsons reports on our top story.
17 months ago, Richard Degnan parked his car in the centre of Leeds, paid for a ticket and went for dinner with his family. 3 weeks later, he received what would be the first of 17 letters regarding a parking fine from the operators of Crown Street car park, XL.
I am confident that I entered my full registration plate. Sadly, I have no way of proving to the parking company that that is what I've done. Because the documentation arrived with me 3 weeks after the event, I'd actually cleaned my car of the ticket. But what I do have is my bank statement, which shows that on the exact minute that I bought the car parking ticket, that transaction went through to my bank account.
Richard appealed, but he was rejected. He then appealed to the IAS, the Independent Appeals Service, and even filmed a video showing what he thought the problem was. But once again, the appeal was rejected.
When you enter just a single digit into the machine to enter your vehicle registration number, that machine then offers immediate payment. So in effect, you could just simply put in the first letter of your car registration and you would go straight through to payment.
A court date loomed. And especially as the co-owner of a brewery, with the prospect of a county court judgment and a plummeting credit rating, it was a daunting time.
I had to teach myself how to be a lawyer, and when I arrived, the case had actually been discontinued, and they then produced a letter addressed to me from XL Parking, telling me that it had been cancelled, and it's a letter that I never received.
Richard managed to get some support from a Facebook group with around 1,000 members. He's not the only one to get stuck in this situation. Linda, who runs the group, didn't want to appear on camera for fear of repercussions.
From the hundreds of cases that I read and the hundreds of people who write in asking for help, you know, you've got thousands of car parks out there. Why do I keep seeing the same ones over and over again? Car parks like Crown Street in Leeds.
Last year, XL asked the DVLA for driver details from car registration numbers they wanted to issue a fine to more than 119,000 times. That's a 20% increase on the year before. In a statement, XL Parking Services Limited say they decided to accept the transaction that had a vehicle registration of L was the one purchased by Mr Degnan, despite it representing a major keying error. They say the parking charge was issued correctly for a breach of the advertised conditions, and it's the motorist's responsibility to check they've correctly entered the vehicle registration number and to contact the helpline number should they encounter an issue so as to potentially avoid a parking charge. They add that they're unable to comment on other cases without specific details. People like Richard and Linda don't feel satisfied when a case is over. They want change. And they want that change in the form of better regulation and a fairer appeal service. Beth Parsons, BBC Look North, Leeds.
Thank you, Beth. Well, Scott Dixon is a consumer expert who has been looking at parking charges. When I spoke to him earlier on today, he was adamant the private parking industry needs more regulation.
We need a proper UK government code of practice put in place urgently, because we cannot rely on the industry marking its own homework and making the rules up as they go along. And it's long overdue, and we do need this urgently to create a level playing field for all motorists to play on.
You've used that very interesting phrase, marking their own homework. So I take it there is some regulation at the moment, but the private parkers have got a hand in that regulation.
Yeah, that's right. And what we have at the moment is what's called, they've introduced their own code of practice, but you can't compare it with the proper UK government code of practice, which they kicked out with a legal challenge. And this is a watered down, self-authored code of practice, which is worded in their own interests, and drivers don't stand a chance. They really don't, and this has been proved time and time again in the courts.
Scott, what should people do if they do receive one of these fines through the post?
Well, the first thing you need to do is ascertain, is it a parking charge notice, which are issued by private parking operators, or is it a penalty charge notice, which are issued by councils? And only councils can fine you. It's a common myth that a private parking operator has issued a fine, because it's not. It's simply an invoice for an alleged breach of contract for parking on private land. But that doesn't mean to say that you can ignore it. And the first thing you need to check is the date, because you've got the date of the parking event and the date of issue, and they need to be issued within 14 days to hold the keeper liable under Schedule 4 of the Protection of Frames Act 2012.
In this recent story we're looking at today, we've got a driver who apparently has not made a mistake, or maybe made a slight mistake in putting in their reg plate into the parking machine, and it goes almost as far as court, where it gets discontinued. Are you surprised it ever went that far?
It doesn't surprise me at all, and Excel are renowned for this. And when you've made a slight mistake, you know, for example, a keying error, you've put 1 instead of I or 0 instead of O. And minor keying errors ought to be cancelled at the first stage on appeal. And this is enshrined in the Trading Association's Code of Practice. And what you would normally expect to pay is a £20 fee to cover the admin for a minor keying error. And Excel are outliers on this. They just won't play fair with motorists.
Scott, thank you very much indeed for your time speaking to us here at Look North. Just one of the main stories.